Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion time. It is Sunday, the 27th day of June, 2021. Take a look at that graphic back there. 96L, 95L. The Atlantic got all kinds of potential out there. I know that wasn't good grammar, but you get the idea. It's busy despite the fact that it's June and there's a couple of systems down in the deep tropics we need to watch there. This other system, 96L, that has popped up in the subtropics. Even an area in the Gulf of Mexico that's going to bring some inclement weather to Texas and vicinity over the next few days. And then, of course, we've got Hurricane Enrique in the eastern Pacific. We got our hands full, even though it's the month of June, the first month of the hurricane season. So let's get on with it. Show you what we have out there. First of all, invest area 95L. 30% chance in the long term. This is an interesting feature. We'll take a look at it closer on satellite imagery. Eventually it's going to impact the islands over here, and that's a certainty. 100% chance that this makes it to the islands, and it will bring sensible impacts that you can feel. Sense, S-E-N-S-E. And I'll talk about what those are in just a minute. And then we've got 96L kind of popped up rather quickly here on its way towards the southeast coast. 50% chance overall. I think this will go up over time. You remember last year we had Tropical Storm Bertha that made landfall along the South Carolina coast at the end of May. I remember because I was in Texas doing some testing of the weather balloon and some other equipment, and I wasn't there for that landfall. It popped up like 12 hours before landfall, very quickly. This has a little bit more advance notice. I'm not in Texas, and so I will be here for this, obviously. And I'm already thinking about heading down to the coast tomorrow. Not going to be a really big problem, but there will be impacts. And that's what we talk about here, are the expected impacts. Then in the eastern Pacific, we have Enrique, not too far off the Mexican coastline, close enough to bring some rain bands to that area. We can see that on the satellite imagery this afternoon. And there's Enrique kind of being disrupted just a little bit because of the close proximity to land. But all these rain bands coming on shore down here, the overall huge moisture fetch, definitely bringing some squally conditions and very heavy rain. And remember, I talk about it a lot, the mountains get really close to the coast down there, and so you can have the possibility of mudslides and flash flooding associated with those rain bands and that constant moisture feed coming off of the relatively warm Pacific. I mean, it's 80 degrees or so in most places down there. Then we've got this disturbed area, a large area in the Gulf of Mexico. This is the most interesting. This entire feature is going to eventually make it towards the Texas coast, bringing some rainfall, maybe some elevated tides with any onshore flow. That part of the Gulf of Mexico, most of the Gulf, is very sensitive. You blow the air across it, what we call a fetch, the distance that air blows across the water's surface. Any kind of a fetch like that down there, the Gulf is very sensitive, and it's easy to pile up the water on the other side. The wind blows across and you get the water piling up. So there might be some elevated tides down there in any of the offshore oil interests. That's a tough one. Down there, definitely need to watch this too. You get some lightning strikes, some gusty winds, and any thunderstorms that develop. You might get a few interesting shelf clouds. You can also see Invest 96L over here, moving pretty quickly towards the coast. It's going to eventually make its way into the low country of South Carolina, it does look like, as we move through tomorrow. So real quick, the tracking map for Enrique down in the eastern Pacific here, a little bit closer to the Mexican coastline. Then it's going to turn more to the northwest, so more west than north, bringing some rainfall, leftover moisture up to the Baja, and it'll also send some swells out, already doing so. All along this region, you'll see some of these higher waves coming in there, and those get focused coming up the Gulf of California. So you could have some stronger surf up in that region, just something to be aware of. And, you know, getting a little closer with the moisture feed now to our friends in the desert Southwest, but there's just not enough of an impetus. You don't have a big, strong high sitting over here to pump all that moisture up into Arizona. New Mexico is going to get a feed of moisture coming across the mountains down here of Mexico, kind of indirectly related to somewhat of a monsoonal flow, but we need that to shift more to the west over here to really funnel it into Arizona and parts of the rest of the southwest. So we will wait and see if that ever manifests itself as we get into July. So just keep an eye on Enrique if you're down there. It is hurricane season. You get these systems coming up this way, and there are impacts. So just be ready for it. Real quick, looking at the GFS for Enrique, kind of hugging the coast there, close to it. It moves on up towards the Baja, makes landfall somewhere in the Baja region, and then the remnant moisture and energy kind of gets tangled up over that area. Heavy rain, definitely going to be some mudslides. I say definitely, I mean you never know for sure, but that's certainly the risk down here. And there's even some hilly terrain along the Baja Peninsula, and of course, again, along the coast of Mexico there. Keep your eyes on that if you're in that region. All right, moving on out to the Atlantic Basin. Pretty active, again, for the month of June here. We have our system in the Gulf of Mexico, not outlooked by the Hurricane Center, and there's really no need to. It's just a disturbance out there, upper level energy back over here, and kind of a surface trough coming through here, an area of convergence. Clearly some shower and thunderstorm activity, and again, that can create some lightning strikes for the oil interests out there, but this whole mess should eventually get on shore in Texas before all is said and done. Here's very small 96L. We'll take a closer look at it overall in just a moment. And then the very large circulation associated with 95L and another tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa. I bet this gets outlooked. That word, outlooked, we use it as a verb from the National Hurricane Center. I think it's coming. I think we're going to have a busy time ahead as these very strong African easterly waves make their way off the continent and come out into the Atlantic, where they try to find favorable conditions, which is usually at this time of year west of about this window right through here. That's usually the area where they will start to blossom. See all this? That's a very easy sign to point out of dry air, relatively speaking, kind of a capped atmosphere, dry air in the upper levels, mid-levels, and dusty air as well, the African dust that comes off with the Saharan air layer. And that helps to keep these systems in check. But that energy comes across, and it'll eventually impact the islands over here. I'll talk about that more in tomorrow's update. But, a few days away, and then you guys are going to have some squalls anywhere from Trinidad and Tobago up through the rest of the Windwards and Leelands? That's a town west of Wilmington. Leewards. I tell you what, I just got to slow down. But yes, you will have some sensible impacts in the days ahead from 95L out there. All right, 96L, a close-up satellite view of it, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. It does have a fairly well-defined surface circulation in here. It's moving pretty briskly along, 15 miles per hour or so off to the west and west-northwest. Due west is 270, and it's not moving due west. It's probably just a little bit north of due west, maybe 280 or so, something like that. A little bit of banding going on in here. Not very well organized. Surface pressures are kind of high out here, according to the Hurricane Center. Recon is expected to go out and check it out tomorrow. I bet they do, unless it falls apart completely in the overnight hours. And then we'll discuss its future and what to expect here in just a moment. One thing that's interesting, it certainly has a well-defined vorticity signature, as picked up from the University of Wisconsin satellite product here, the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies. So yeah, it's definitely has that low-level skeleton, if you will. The framework is there. There's the energy in the Gulf, but notice this is linear. Kind of looks like a teardrop or whatever. It's longer, more linear, and this is more oval-shaped, more circular and focused, whereas this is spread out over a larger area, and this will again move on shore over Texas. And then here's the system out in the Atlantic trying to develop. Again, it's the dry air and the cooler sea surface temperatures because it's June, that are helping to keep it back, which is a good thing. All right, so in terms of our system down here that we're watching, as it makes its way towards the coast down here, probably the low country of South Carolina, it'll cross the Gulf Stream tomorrow. So the water temperatures will markedly increase. And then it'll encounter some of that shelf water where water temperatures are a little bit cooler. And in fact, they are a little bit cooler than average. And let's zoom way in here. I know I could have pulled up the higher res graphic, but, I'll be lazy and just show you this one for now. It does the trick. Right here, anywhere from Cape Fear south through Cape Romaine down towards the east coast of Florida, really. Water temperatures cooler by maybe a degree Celsius. So we're talking about more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So as the system comes across and encounters that, it might not have as much juice to work with. So a little bit of anomalous cooling. Water temperatures a little cooler than normal, but warm enough overall, especially as it crosses the Gulf Stream here. It won't surprise me if this becomes a tropical storm, and if it does, the name will be Danny. These small systems, the global models rarely pick these up easily. It's just the resolution, the way the models handle the background state. The higher resolution models, when they start running the HWRF, especially, that's the hurricane-specific, developed for tropical cyclones version, the hurricane version of the Weather Research Forecast Model, WRF. The H is for hurricane, and that'll pick it up in a more high-resolution fashion. That's a whole other topic for another day, how all of this stuff works. But the global models kind of give you a wide view of everything, so to speak, and then the sort of the macro view, if I'm saying it right, and the HWRF will give you like a micro view, much closer up, higher resolution modeling. And so once that starts running, hopefully tonight, we'll get an idea of exactly what to expect. But you folks down in the low country, down towards Savannah, Tybee Island, that vicinity, up to maybe Georgetown, rip currents, definitely going to be an increase, onshore flow, elevated tides. This area is really prone to flooding, some bands of heavier showers and thunderstorms. So from Charleston and the harbor area down through Beaufort and Savannah and that region, maybe some tropical storm conditions, heavier squalls coming in, flooding. There will be impacts. And that's what you need to be thinking of. It's not a major problem for everybody, but it could be a major problem for you if a tree falls in your backyard or something like that, right? So, just pay attention to it, be ready, and be aware. If you got Radar Scope or whatever radar app you like, watch it on that. Keep an eye on it. I mean, look, there's the energy associated with it in the modeling, the GFS here. And so that's bigger than any of us. It's certainly bigger than me, so watch that. As it comes in here, I'll show you here on the modeling. We'll put this into motion. This, by the way, is the same part of the atmosphere as this. 5,000 feet up, 850 millibars. So let's watch this area as it comes in. Not particularly impressive in the global model there. Again, the GFS, and it's coming in tomorrow night, maybe down near Savannah and vicinity. It could be a little bit more north than that. We'll have to see. A lot is going to depend on how strong the ridge is here. Think of the Bermuda High there as like a big balloon, and if it inflates a little bit, it'll push the system a little bit more to the south. If it deflates a little bit or moves maybe more north, it's all, completely fluid, quite literally. That'll determine where the exact center comes in, but that's really not the issue here. This will have impacts north of the center. Onshore flow, wherever the center makes landfall. Just pretend that it is Savannah, right at the Savannah River. Everywhere north of there, Beaufort, Charleston, Georgetown, Myrtle Beach, you'll have onshore flow and the occasional squall that'll come in. Hi, I'm back. I was trying to get rid of that. There we go. So just be ready for that, all right? No big deal in the grand scheme of things, but big enough that you should pay attention, especially if you're in small craft, sailboats, maybe people heading down to the beach. They're not quite aware of it. Just be aware of it. That's all I ask. I'm trying to help you do just that. Now, let's widen this out and look at the broader perspective. Again, GFS, 850 millibars. There's 96L. There's the system in the Gulf, 95L. Probably soon to be 97L, honestly, the rate things are going. So let's put all this into motion now that all the X's and O's are laid out on the playing field, so to speak, if this will work for me. There we go. So you see 96L comes ashore tomorrow night. 95L, where is it? It's hard to define, not much to it in the GFS anyway. And by about hour 90, so Wednesday night into Thursday, 95L is now entering the islands. And let's get rid of my drawing down here. That'll help a little bit. And then we got this next system rolling along in the deep tropics. Big subtropical ridge sitting out there. Once this migrates more north, it's kind of south of normal, it looks like to me. That's pretty far south for that axis through there. Later in the season, this will get more to the north. The trades will weaken down here even more, and these systems will be more north. They will also gain more Coriolis force, so forth and so on. It's June, and we're already seeing this stuff. So we'll watch and see how things progress. I'll slide this out into the future even more. 95L by hour 120, tangled up over here somewhere. GFS doesn't have much out here. That's really far south for that high there, that's for sure. You'll see later in the season this will be much more to the north and allow these systems to develop further. It's just the way things are. That's why climatology is what it is. Now let's look at it from the Euro's perspective. You might as well look at sort of the dissenting view, or the other side, the opposing view. ECMWF, also at the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere. 24 hours out, there's 96L right there, headed towards the southeast coast. 95L, whatever, soon to be 97, I think. And so watch what happens here. That's 24, 48, 96 is in Georgia somewhere. Look what it's doing, though, the Euro trying to amplify 95. There's this system. I'll leave that on there for the next frame. Both of those try to ramp up just a little bit. That's day 5. So at least according to the Euro, for what it's worth, just pointing it out, it's got a tropical storm probably heading towards the islands here, south of that stout area of high pressure. And then 95L somewhere in here. Interesting, you know, what the models have been kind of weird. You remember last week we were thinking, oh, here comes the one off Africa, all those ensembles of the Euro. I don't know. I don't know if it's leftover issues from last year when we were missing all that upper air data from the aircraft during the pandemic, but the global models have not done well at tropical cyclogenesis the last couple of years. It's very strange and very alien to me. I'm usually able to look at these 5-day windows here. That's all we're looking at. It's day 5. See? 120 hours. It's right there. This is not 300 hours out, you know. 5 days. Come on. It's all that we ask is for some reliability here. So we'll see what happens. You know, it's a weird time, that's for sure. Got to be on your toes. I'll help you do that each morning. Good segue into this little advertisement. Hurricane Season, the podcast, an audio briefing every morning. Today's was in the afternoon because I slept in, but it's a good way to start the day, at least give you an audio version of what I'm looking at in the day ahead, whenever that day is for me, right? It is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, Google, all that kind of stuff. And again, it's just a little digest about what I'm looking at for the upcoming day. And then we do the hurricane outlook and discussion right here on YouTube. I'll draw a little arrow there to point YouTube out in case you didn't know. YouTube, yep, that's where we do the hurricane outlook and discussion. On Facebook, but I don't know, Facebook is Facebook, right? And I love the Twitter. I've been on the Twitter, as we call it, since I think 2009, something like that. So it's been a while. And we are crowdfunded through awesome folks at patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Lots of extra benefits if you help to invest in what we're doing. You get to see behind-the-scenes stuff, the live cameras, the tracking maps, original programming, and more. It's an amazing world, isn't it? Social media and the crowdfunding, it all works together. All right, so I will be watching things with 96L. Probably going to head out into the field tomorrow. I mean, come on, it's just down the coast. 5 hours at best to Savannah and the low country of South Carolina. Not expecting a real big issue out of this, but it'll be good to get out there and document tomorrow, stream live from the vehicle, whatever vehicle that may be. I'm working on that. I don't have an official chase vehicle anymore. The old Chevy Tahoe has been retired and mothballed now 3 years ago, and so I usually rent something. I've got an older additional Chevy Tahoe that one of our partners purchased for the project a few years ago. It's also 20 years old. It's got a lot of miles on it, and I probably will just use that. And, you know, if it breaks down in Savannah, I'll just get AAA to tow me home. Whatever. Bottom line is I should be out tomorrow covering this in the late afternoon into evening, and we'll see what happens. You know, if I get up tomorrow and it's just, nothing much, then I won't. Otherwise, I'll see you live sometime tomorrow afternoon, but we'll do an update and, of course, the podcast in the morning ahead of time. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you one way or another again tomorrow.